welcome back to my channel. My name's Dick Fleming, and I was a member of First Force Recon, a member of a 6-man reconnaissance team during the Vietnam War in 1967, 1968, and I wanted to take the opportunity to tell you a few of my stories of my time in the Marine Corps, my time with Force Recon. And I hope you'll find them interesting and fun to listen to. I did write a book about 10 years ago called Chasing Charlie, a Force Recon Marine in Vietnam. And I think you should really buy this book because in about 50 years it's going to be really rare. There's been so few copies sold, and it's going to become a classic, rare book in a little while. So it's available on Amazon, Chasing Charlie, a Force Recon Marine in Vietnam. There's a picture of me with my M14 and my camouflage beret right on the cover. That didn't last very long, either the headgear or my M14. The headgear I changed over to a typical bush hat after a number of iterations trying different things. This old guy works rather well. It worked very well in the bush. The rain came down and it wasn't too big and it didn't make any noise if a brush hit it or something like that. Kept my head dry during the monsoon season. So it did what it needed to do. I'll put it on my head just so I can remember some of the stories a little bit better, keep my brain warm. What I'd like to tell you today is the day that I became a hero, at least for a day. And this happened during a training mission, actually. Force Recon was always training. The members of Force Recon were always doing something, whether it was in the bush or in the rear. We were training. When we were in Da Nang, every morning we went on a 3 or 4 mile run down past Freedom Hill and all the way into Da Nang City, almost, and all the way back. And as we ran, we'd sing a typical recon chant. Well, let me see if I can remember one. When I get to heaven, there's 3 things I'd like to be: Airborne Recon UDT, Arrrr. And the Arrrr was what we ran to. The Army changed it over, I think, incorporated into their idea of a chant, and they called it "Oorah, Oorah, Oorah." But that didn't quite make it for the Marines. They screwed up everything like they normally do and changed our Oorah to what they called their chant or whatever. So in any case, we were told that it came from the dive klaxon, that when the submarine dived, it would go "Aurora, Aurora, Aurora." And other people said it came from a seal barking, the sound of a seal barking. I don't know. But in any case, that's what we ran to. And there's a number of more chants, most of which are thoroughly obscene, and I can't put them on the internet for you. But in any case, we were told one day that we were going to go out on a beach reconnaissance training mission. And what that meant was that we'd be in a rubber boat, and we'd be dropped off, and we'd be picked up by one of the high-speed river boats that patrol the coast and the rivers of Nam. And we were going to determine the top topography of the underwater off of the water underneath a beach, the underwater beach levels. During the World War II in Tarawa, of course, we lost a lot of Marines because they misjudged the tide and they misjudged the bottom. And unfortunately, a lot of Marines, when they went off their landing craft, their landing craft either couldn't get close enough into the beach because they hit a reef or something, or the men, when they were dropped off, they were dropped off into deep water and they drowned with all their heavy equipment. So one of the missions of Force Recon was beach reconnaissance, and we of course like to train rubber boat training and beach reconnaissance. You know, the waters off Vietnam were clear and they were warm, and it was a pleasure to be out there after being in the mud and the conditions of the jungle. So we got our gear together, and the dive team got their stuff out of the dive shed, and they handed us out the necessary equipment, which wasn't much. We already had our swim shorts, and that's all we really needed. And they gave us a little plastic pad with a crayon we could write underwater with. And that was on a string that we put around our necks. And we had also a line that was measured in feet with a weight at the bottom that we would drop from the surface and go down to the bottom, and we'd find out how deep the water was at a certain point. So the idea was that they would drop us off, they'd drop each man off at a certain set interval, perhaps 50 yards between each man, and then we'd move into the beach about 20 yards each time, and we'd make a measurement, and then we'd move in again as a unit and make a measurement and move in again. So that's the way we determine the underwater topography of the beach. And in case there was ever to be a landing, you know, that's the way it would be done. The only problem was, of course, that if this was a real situation, we wanted to go in fast, do the job, and then get extracted fast. And that's where the riverboat came in. So we got our rubber boats, and we got our six-man team, and we got all our equipment, such as it was, and we paddled out to where we would, from one, I think it was Red Beach or maybe China Beach, I'm not really sure, I don't remember, off of Da Nang somewhere. And we went out about a mile into the ocean with our rubber boat, and we were picked up by this riverboat, and the riverboat loaded us onto their boat and strapped our rubber boat to the side of theirs, so it was actually bouncing along the side. And I'll tell you the reason for that in a moment. So now that we were approaching our beach objective, our theoretical beach objective, and the idea was that we would, each man would jump into the rubber boat, and then he would drop overboard, and then the next man would come in right immediately afterward, drop into the boat, and then flop into the water. Next man, one after another. And it was done at a certain, the boat was moving at about 20 miles an hour, if not faster, and we would then be separated along the length of the line of the beach by about 50 yards perhaps, you know, but depending on what time each man dropped off. And when we got into the water, we tried to separate ourselves out to an equal distance. And then we started to swim into shore, taking our measurements as we came. So every 20 yards, 50 yards, we would drop our line, take a measurement, write down the numbers, go in another 50 yards or so, drop off again, drop the line, take a measurement. Then back at the intelligence section, they were back at the rear, they would gather all this information together, and they could create a pattern of the bottom of the bay there, the beach, off the beach. And so we gradually moved our way in. And it took us about, I don't know, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes to make our way in, maybe a little bit more. We moved slowly and we tried to keep in sync with one another all the time, moving in. And of course this was difficult because there were currents out there as well. And we were maybe half a mile offshore at that point, making our way gradually into the beach. Now if that had been a real situation, we would never have come all the way into the beach. We would have finished our job and then we would have gone right out again, swam right out. But this was a training exercise, so the boat just dropped us off and left. And of course we didn't have the rubber boat anymore because we were still attached to the river boat. But they said they'd be coming back in about 3 hours. So now we had 3 hours to kill. And we were sitting on the beach there. It was hot. And we didn't know what the heck we could do to keep ourselves occupied. But we were right off the Da Nang airstrip. And so in the distance, my friend Thurman said, "Hey, that looks like a PX over there. It looks like the Air Force's non-commissioned officers' PX, or maybe the enlisted man's PX, whatever. Maybe we can go over there and get a beer." Oh, so we don't have any money on us. He goes, "I'm never without money." And he pulled a $10 bill out of his swim shorts. It was all soggy. It was the Vietnamese script, of course. It wasn't a real $10 bill, but it was good enough for a couple beers. Well, the other guys, they didn't want to have any part of this. They were all tired from swimming in, and they just wanted to lay here on the beach. But Thurman and I were determined we were going to get a beer for ourselves. So we started moving toward the little shack there we saw at the end of the runway. The only problem was that the runway was between us and the bar. And there were planes coming in from Da Nang, pretty big, huge cargo planes, and they were all coming in there, and we were going to have a problem if we didn't time this just right. So we timed everything after about I don't know, a few planes came in. We realized that it was about a minute between the planes, so we figured we could run across the runway and make our way to the bar. Well, we started running across the runway, and at first it was okay. The runway was made of steel plates that the planes landed on. But as we started to get toward the middle of the runway, two things happened. One, there was a lot of oil and rubber on the runway from where the planes had come in to land. It was black from that. And the other thing was, for some reason, the heat got harder and harder as more we ran across that runway, until eventually we were like running across a heated frying pan, and we were jumping like gazelles, making huge leaps to keep our feet off that blazingly hot runway. And we finally made it to the other side, and there was a few guys. There was actually some Australian Air Force guys sitting there having a beer, and they were watching us do this. And they looked at us and they said, "Well, where the hell did you guys come from?" And well, we came from the beach. They said, "Well, you want a beer?" We said, "Yeah, we sure do. That's what we came over here for." So they gave us a couple beers, and we drank the beers, and Sherman brought them beers, with the money that we had. And then we realized, well, we had time to go back. Well, I wasn't ready to go back. I said, "Kate, maybe we can make some deal with the head honcho here running the bar. Maybe we can get a case of beer." And Sherman goes, "Well, you can try. When do you want anything to bargain with?" I said, "I got my watch. I had just come back 2 weeks earlier from Hong Kong, and I had bought myself a new Psycho dive watch. I think it cost about $250 at the time, and it was a beauty, a nice thick case and a nice strong band." And so I went over to the bartender, And I asked him if he would trade me a case of beer for my watch. And he looked it over, you know, he shook it, made sure it was ran properly. Came back with a case of beer, case of Budweiser, nice and cold too. So Thurman said, asked him for a couple of towels, and he didn't know what we wanted towels for, but we came back with some towels, and we put them in water, and we wrapped them around our feet so we could get across that damned tarmac again. Well, by the airfield there. And so we made it across without getting hit by one of the planes coming in. And when we reached the beach, those guys couldn't believe it. We were heroes of the day. They couldn't believe how we had managed to come back with a case of beer out of the middle of nowhere. So now it was getting close to the time that we were going to get picked up. So we grabbed all of our stuff together and we swam out to where we were supposed to be picked up by the rubber boat and the PT boat, basically the river boat. And the way that this was done, another training exercise in a way, was that the PT boat or the river boat would come along at about, seemed to me, 40 miles an hour. It might have been faster, it might have been slower, I don't know. It was fast enough. It would come along in a straight line like this, and each one of us would be again separated by 100 yards or so, and we would be swimming, trying to keep our equal distance as this boat came toward us. And we'd raise our arm like this out of the water when it came toward us. And in the boat was a guy who'd sat there with a bungee, big, thick bungee rubber cord in a loop. And as he went by, hanging off the side of this rubber boat, he would hook our arm on it, and the force of that would bring us out of the water and into the back of the rubber boat. And then we would clamber up over the top of that, over the top of the riverboat's railing and get in the boat. And then the next guy would come in. So the boat never stopped. It just kept on going. And if it missed somebody, if somebody's arm wasn't in the right position or they were out of that line where the boat was coming, they'd come back and do it again. And poor Thurman, he was half blitzed to begin with, and he was having trouble with the current. And it was 2 or 3 times before they finally managed to get him. Our gunnery sergeant was sitting there on the top of the boat smoking a big cigar, and Thurman was almost drowning then. You know, he was really struggling in the water. And the captain of the boat said, "Yeah, why don't we just slow down and we'll get this guy?" He goes, Nah, he's going to make it or he's not going to make it. He didn't care. So finally, Thurman got his arm through the loop properly and was jerked into the rubber boat. And with that, you know, his pants, his swim trunks nearly came off. He was so tired and so stressed, and the boat was moving so fast that he lost his swim trunks practically. But in any case, he made it back into the boat. And then they brought us back into the base and dropped us off about a mile from shore, and we paddled in. And it was quite an experience, you know, to do that. I mean, it's not the type of thing you normally do. It's kind of what it feels like is sitting at the side of the road and trying to move out of the way of a tractor trailer that's barreling towards you about 40 miles an hour, and you're trying to either get lined up with it. You know, the least little mistake, it could run right over your head, or, you know, I don't know. It wasn't exactly the safest thing I've ever done in my life, that's for sure. But that's another story, and hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to my channel and hit like. I'd appreciate it, and I'll have a few more to tell you in the future. Thank you again.